I want to invite the guest speaker for this morning, James Muraguri. James is a CEO, Institute for Public Finance. He's a public finance practitioner with over 15 years of experience in the non-profit sector. He's a founder and CEO of Institute for Public Finance, IPF, a non-profit think tank that generates research-driven evidence for advocacy and provides technical assistance to governments and non-state actors to promote equitable, efficient, and effective public finance underpinned by transparency, accountability, and participation. So I would request all of us to warm our hands. Let's warm our hands as we clap, give a rain clap to Mr. Muraguri as he comes on board. Rain clap.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Salamu tu. Good morning. Thank you, thank you. My name is James Muraguri. I'm the CEO, founder and CEO at the Institute of Public Finance. The Institute of Public Finance, as has been said, is a non-profit think tank that we work to generate credible evidence for policy and action. Established 12 years ago, our intention at the think tank was primarily to drive conversations that would ensure that transparency of public resources is adhered to. And more importantly, looking at the principles of public finance, which are equity, efficiency, accountability, transparency, and participation. I want to quickly go through some few key highlights that would allow us to open up the conversation for today, at which we are looking at fiscal discipline and transparency, but also looking at bridging the procurement supply chain management and where there's a divide with finance. Our work at the Institute cuts across climate financing, health financing, macro fiscal and public debt, and revenue. And now, the key players within that revenue and macro conversation are the procurement people. Because the mandate you have, that opinion that you have to give for that procurement to be done is extremely very important when it comes to procurement of our debt as a country. So where does procurement meet transparency? One thing that we would like to draw attention to is the disconnect between finance and procurement. Those who make the decision on this is the figure we are putting, and those who ultimately determine this, the figure that was put, is what we are going to stick to. And that's one thing that, that leads to cost overruns, procurement delays, and some optimal resource allocation. However, the question around these two portfolios have a direct impact on transparency of public resources. And it's very important in ensuring that then integrated planning, annual planning sessions between CFOs, heads of procurement, and relevant program directors at all levels, it's consistently undertaken. And because this is where we break the silos. People like working in silos. Somebody told me they are called cylinders of excellence. So depending with how you look at it, whether it's a silo or a cylinder of excellence, it's very important that then you ensure that then there is this session that is, that we don't need. Procurement timelines into budget cycles reduce last-minute tenders and inflated bids. From where we sit as a think tank and our work being research, it is not lost on us as Kenyans, primarily as Kenyans, working with this space of the challenges that procurement people find themselves in. Because the last minute disbursements happen, when they happen, and procurement plans have to be achieved. So it's not that we are coming from an isolated point where we don't understand the operating environment under which you work. However, the responsibility in your annual working plans, sometimes it's beyond you. So it is extremely very important that we look at this, and also living to the realities of our fiscal space as a country. The other thing is strategic alignment to ensure every shilling spent drives policy objectives for the country. And one of the things I'll be speaking to is it's on pending bills, how they've moved. And the question is it that we are not well aware of how this planning process is? But again, it is not lost on us with regards to the operating environment. And finally, how we divide this when it comes to procurement and transparency is a question of publication and publishing of annual work plans, procurement work plans. We know they are published. How publicized they are becomes the question. And I'm glad for the gentlemen who've spoken to this on how the law has evolved, that deadlines, now no longer, exist. We have to always keep that, because that's one question around driving transparency. If you look at the last piece of work that we did for Kenya, so I lead the research work on budget transparency for Kenya, which is done across 120 countries. Last year, when we did the research, Kenya scored 55 out of 100. We have progressively moved as a country. At some point, we are at 43. But we have never beaten Uganda as Kenya. With regards to transparency, Uganda is more transparent, despite having a smaller economy than us. We've never managed to get to where Uganda is. Now, why does transparency in procurement matter? Because this is a question of fiscal discipline. At the time when debt service is mounting, public finance pressures, every shilling spent matters. And if every shilling matters, then you want to know how those numbers look. I want to draw your attention that in 2019-2020, we spent 41% of our ordinary revenue to service debt. 2024-2025, we spent 68%. So 68 shillings for every 100 was spent on servicing debt. Now, the question we need to ask ourselves is, how does procurement, what role does procurement play in our debt obligation as a country? Because your work at procurement level has a lot to do also with efficiency. It's not just pushing papers. If you look at this financial year, for example, we are going to spend approximately 1.1 trillion in servicing of debt. But then our fiscal deficit is just around 600 billion. And that 600 billion is what's going to be spent literally in development. And that's a portfolio, potentially. The major piece of work, that 600 billion on development spending, plus the other recurrent expenditure that keeps the government running, for example. You have to look at it and see your portfolio every year of what you are responsible for is $1 trillion plus. So how efficient you are in your work then becomes a key contributor to how our debt equation looks like. And of course, that directly has an impact on your salary. Because if we can't borrow, we have to find somewhere to tax. Right? See your paycheck and see the amount of tax you are paying. And also the amount of debt. It has a direct relationship. It has a direct relationship between our debt and procurement and your salary. Now, the other question around the question on transparency and fiscal discipline, and the disconnect that allows, rises, is the question on pending bills. As at March 2024, the national government had 0.8 billion in pending bills. As at March 2025, this rose to 511 billion. At the counties, March 2024, it was 152 billion. March 2025, it was 172 billion. Now, it's entirely up to us as a country to choose how we flow. And we, of course, we understand. We know that there are committees looking at this question. But then the question is, are we budgeting? Are we transparent when it comes to the question around planning? Because if you look at the pending bills, the total pending bills for the past financial year is literally equivalent to the fiscal deficit that we have for this coming financial year. Now, the Auditor General has flagged quite a number of things that has a direct relationship on transparency, accountability, and essentially the discipline itself. And of course, this includes procurement delays, irregular advance payment, expired contract for procurement of goods, over expenditure and budgeted expenditure, and overpricing. And it still again falls to the question around the transparent process under which the process lands. Mind you, we are still alive to the fact that we work in a politically charged environment that has peculiar interests on the procurements that happen. So it is not lost to us on that. Now, giving you the bigger picture when it comes to fiscal indiscipline is a question around a fiscal framework that habitually revises revenue downwards and upwards of the original estimates, but does not change the revenue, the rising expenditure. That's a question that we need to bring to your attention as the procurement people, having the view of how this happens. And this question is around you walking into a supermarket. I like drawing attention to the practicality of every day as an individual when you walk to a supermarket with the 2,000 shillings. By the time you get to the teller, you realize there's something else that I missed that adds 200 shillings. So you go back and pick something else. So your budget goes to 2,200. And then you come back to the teller and you realize I missed something. You add 500, it goes to 2,700. And then finally, by the time you get back to the final, I missed. You move, it goes to 3,000. That's equivalent having, in a supermarket, a single session of shopping, you have revised your budget 3 times. You have a supplementary budget 3 times. And that's fiscal indiscipline. Because you have to look back, you should have looked back in your shopping basket and wondered what are my priorities? Because we understand everything is important, but what is the priority that you're looking at? This is what happened to the government of Kenya in the financial year 2024-2025. We had 3 supplementary budgets. From 3.9 trillion to 3.8 trillion, and then 4 trillion and 7, and then again 4.043 trillion, moving over the same period 3 times. And that's an indictment of how our fiscal indiscipline looks like. Now, while we understand this, we are also alive to the fact as procurement people, because I'm not speaking to people who reported today on duty in Kenya, but who have been here, that we are constrained. Our fiscal space as a country has shrunk so much because of debt. As we've seen 68 shillings of every 100 shillings we are spending as a country is going to debt, to repayment of debt. Now, this leaves us as a country very vulnerable. One thing that we are always very much alive to the fact is, from a monetary perspective, we are not going to default as a country. That one, we are highly convinced. But what is happening is that the moment you walk into a public health facilities for emergency, you will not get health services because we were unable to service. We were unable to procure essential services. And this is why we are calling for efficiency in procurement. Because if you support the system, we ensure the system is effective, it's efficient in procurement, it means then we have more resources that can be directed. And I think it is extremely very important that that happens. From a macro level at the country level, it's of course, we know Article 223 is one highly, abused article in our constitution. The movement of these numbers. And the people who see these numbers moving around, and I'm happy because I'm speaking to the right people, is the people who are in procurement. Because again, as it has been said, your opinion, that opinion that you have to sign on that document, is also the truth of the matter, is what shapes how our fiscal discipline looks like. The control of budget recorded that out of 48 billion approved by the CS National Treasury, 6.7 billion were not approved by COB, being questions, arising out of that. Of course, it's very important that your opinion as procurement people when it comes to limiting the fiscal indiscipline be very well detailed and thorough to ensure that we are able to ring-fence our resources like for UHC, education, capitation grants, and social safety nets. As we know, quite a number of our citizens rely on government social safety nets. Commitment controls driven by procurement people, extremely very important to ensure that budgeted procurements proceed. And of course, from where we sit as researchers, as advocates, we are worried about our parliament, which has failed to play its oversight role accordingly. According to the Open Budget Survey, which is well done, reviewed by the National Treasury, I have a peer who reviews at the National Treasury, and engaging with Parliament, I have a review at Parliament. Parliament consistently ranks as the weakest link with regards to fiscal discipline. So of course, as much as people might beat and say, oh, procurement people are the ones who procure, there is a lot of work that needs to be done from a legislative perspective. Now, how do we ensure transparency proceeds without paralysis? It's extremely very important that at your level where you can, please digitize and publish your procurement plans, publicize them for citizens to engage with your office. You have that authority. It's very important to track each contract to completion. The challenge, of course, we have is overruns. Contract overruns are happening very much in government, and they are costing us a lot as a country. Again, we also alive that it's important that you balance disclosure with commercial confidentiality by publishing summary detail without sensitive bid details. Do not keep that saying, we can't publish, but please publish to us as required by the law. And of course, the platform by PPRA, we've been waiting. The statistics show that there is a challenge with regards to what is being published by both MDAs and the national, the MDAs and the county governments. The Auditor General reports, I will recommend that you use them as your tools. See what the Auditor General is speaking about with regards to the gaps that are existing. As key audit matters, pick them, and then ensure that that's something that we can be able to work. It's my desire and our desire as the Institute that there will be extreme engagement by PPRA and the National Treasury and other agencies to ensure that AI-powered procurement risk tools that can detect price anomalies and fraud are embedded to detect risks early enough. Collaborations with CSOs and other non-state actors and private sector is extremely very important. And of course, we are very excited that EGP is going to be rolled out. Please do not backtrack. And of course, we know it's a thorn in the flesh, as there are going to be challenges around it, but we have seen commitments that it's going to be acted upon. This is it's your domain. We've been listening as consultations across procurement teams went across the country, and we know there is full commitment for this to learn. Please do not backtrack. This might be the only savior we need as a country to get our efficiency in our PFM system right. To bridge the procurement finance divide, this is a governance issue that requires leadership, systems, and incentives that prioritize value for money and delivery on pro-citizen priorities. procurement and finance teams to drive transparency in public finance as strategic partners in service delivery. So our desire is that these teams work in a way that it does not just allow to say we procured pay, or pay we procured, but a team that works together for service delivery. Early collaboration, discipline, and leveraging EGP and IFMIS is something that, that should be completely adopted, and innovations that improve value for money and public trust. Further, it is important that the align strategies with the PFM reforms and commit to continuous improvement. We know the PFMR strategy 2024-2028 is ongoing and has a bigger component, a great component on procurement. And finally, please pay all, including the orphan invoices. Thank you.